and has recently started a new show called Camilla Singh Show. This is on Shaw Multicultural Channel in BC and Alberta, and if you have stories, please contact her. She's always there for the grassroots. And I want us to join hands and really acknowledge that, Camilla, because the grassroots is losing its foundation, but we will persevere. Camilla is the founder of the past president of Fiji Professional Women's Network. She has worked with the women's movement for over 25 years as a counselor and as a victim support worker. She's an activist, advocate, and a very serious, honest, and compassionate human rights defender. She was the chair of the BC Human Rights Coalition and has been organizing anti-racism events since 2009. And when I look back at the sheet, you'll notice there's a poster and my daughter's on that. And when I looked at the event again, time flies. My daughter was like 4, she's 27 now. So 2009. In 2006, the Vancouver Sun named her as one of the 100 influential people, and she has also started and celebrated Fiji's Independence Day. The list goes on, but I'd like us to join hands. Thank you for continuing to organize this event. So this is an introduction, Camilla. You have to come to the podium.
You can take over, it's fine. Thank you, Indra. I think you said a little bit too much, but anyways, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I know a lot more people said that they were coming due to the weather or whatever. You know, it's always not the numbers that you feel they are coming. But the people that are here, that's what matters to me. The people that are here took the time out in the pouring rain are the people that matters to us, because they are here for one purpose, and one purpose only, because we all want to combat racism. We live in a society, it doesn't matter when we started, like Indra said, 12, 15 years ago, 2009, we are in 2025, but we still cannot say that we are living in a racist-free society. Look around you, what's happening in the world, so you'll know what's going on. So we can't stop here, and we should not be stopping here. We should continue and have your voice. And sometimes you may be the voice of the people that can't speak for themselves, but don't stay silent, right? As people of color, we have come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. It doesn't matter whether we have a senator in the House, we have the mayor in the House, or all this important honorary council of Fiji. Mr. Bobby Naikar is among us. So the people that meant to be here, we have reached to a peak of wherever we should go, but racism still exists in our society. And we have to acknowledge that. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about why we celebrate this day. I already said, thank you for attending. March 21st is a United Nations Declaration of Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. This is a historical day. We usually observe this day on March 21st, but this year, on March 21st, is Nowruz. Nowruz is a Persian New Year, and we want to respect that as well. So we decided to do this a day before. A day before, a day after, doesn't matter. But tomorrow is the United Nations Declaration. And when we talk about tomorrow, there is an event happening at the City Hall that PIX is doing, and they are doing art display. So it's an open invitation. Anybody can come, starts at 10 a.m. And I think the official opening will be 10:30. Am I right? Because there are PIX people here too. We observe this day annually to commemorate the day when the police in Sharpenville in South Africa opened fire and killed 69 people and wounded many more. who were attending a peaceful demonstration against apartheid to pass law in 1990. This is the 60th anniversary of the International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Why is this day important? Ask yourself, why are we still talking about it? It is important because we are gathered here to fostering equality, breaking down barriers and embracing diversity and create a harmonious and just society to thrive together. And that is very important. We cannot just close your eyes, just say if it's happening to this community, it's not touching me and it's not part of me. We should leave it. We all are immigrants here. Canada is built on immigration. And I think that's very important for us to remember. By being aware of the signs such as using racial slurs, making jokes about race, getting defensive when called out, talking about people of color and generalized people, you can more likely identify racist. You can avoid them together to confront and challenge their racism. But how many of us will do that and can do that? Some of us are very scared for our own safety. We don't want to talk about it. We just put a blindfold and go away. But I think we should have a courage to say something. Hope you all will walk out of this forum and stand up for yourself and for those who cannot stand up for themselves. In many cases, language is a barrier, or we as people of color, we are too concerned about others' feeling and don't want to start something. But we'll be giving you tools in this toolbox today to speak against discrimination and be the voice of those who doesn't have a voice, which is so, so important. So with that, we're gonna be opening. We'll do the acknowledgement, land acknowledgement. So this was a little spell for me to do. Thank you so much for listening.
I would like to call upon Jennifer Sheriff to do the opening, the Indigenous opening. Jennifer Sheriff is an award-winning Indigenous educator, anti-racism activist, artist, and Indigenous relations specialist. She has worked in the areas of Indigenous education and social development for many years, having a vast experience as a guest speaker, cultural presenter, instructor, curriculum developer, and program manager. She's considered an expert in areas of decolonization, educational trauma, and an important word that we often hear about is reconciliation, and I hope today you'll have an understanding of what it means rather than the tokenized language of reconciliation that we throw around. So thank you, and hopefully we can have a conversation around that. There's so much, and perhaps when I introduce you as a panelist, I'll draw on that. But I think right now we would like to welcome you to do the acknowledgement. Thank you.
Stage, so ladies, if you're at that age and stage with me, you'll understand that I have to have a few notes, otherwise I forget why I walk into a room. Is anyone else going through that? I'll walk into a room and go, what am I doing? Why did I come? Oh my goodness. And glasses, those are things. So please forgive me if I need to refer to a note or two. But first off, I'd like to just start by saying thank you very much to Camilla once again, and the folks that work with you. I was honored to be here last year and was very honored to be asked to be here again this year. So I raise my hands in thanks for all the work you do and for honoring me and asking me to be here. And it's a very common Indigenous expression to say, to raise my hands in thanks to all of you. Because each and every person that is here tonight is meant to be here and is meant to either hear a message, share a message, or what have you. But there's always a very specific reason why each and every person in the room is here. So thank you so much for honoring me with your presence as well. So if you know me, some of you do, some are new faces to me, you'll know that, maybe like it or not, I don't know, I don't do the territorial acknowledgement in the blanket sort of traditional way. That's because this land has nurtured me. This land has nurtured my family. This land has kept me going, and keeps us all going in whatever way. And I'm not from here. I was born in Seal Territory, just outside of Kelowna. I was born and raised there. My father is Native American, Tsalagi, and English, and my mother is Canadian. And growing up in the Okanagan, my father didn't feel like he fit in there because that wasn't the land of his people. My mom is actually here from the coast here, and is of mixed European and Mongolian descent, and never feel like she really fit anywhere either in terms of identity, racial identity, that sort of thing. And so I was talking about this a little while ago with an elder from St'Alis, Darren Charlie, and I said, you know, it's funny because my father came here via Vietnam. So my father grew up very poor. It was actually the Native families that had money and status. And he died when my father was 2 years old. And so when my grandfather died, that all went away. So my father, white passing, grew up in the projects, Providence, Rhode Island, and had the knowledge from a pretty young age that if he joined the Army, he could get his education paid for. And education to him was very, very important. And so at 16, he enrolled in the US Army and was in Vietnam by the time he was 18. And being the mother of an almost 21-year-old, I just shudder to think, oh my gosh, if my son, you know, was at 20, almost 21, a veteran of war. I just can't even imagine that. So my father went over to Vietnam, and in his second tour of duty, he went AWOL and came to Canada. And I think that was in about 1970 when he came. And he didn't get his dishonorable discharge until 1996. So he was a man with no citizenship for 26 years. In Canada illegally, but couldn't return to the United States because you may know that for the American Army, to be a deserter of the Army will get you in more hot water than rape and murder a lot of the time. So he couldn't go back to where he was from. He couldn't visit family or anything like that. As a result of that, I didn't grow up in my ancestral territory. I haven't even been to my ancestral territory. The lateral violence with my father's people is so strong that if you live on the opposite side of the river to one of the nations, they consider you the other, not one of us. So we're not connected anymore formally to a community in the United States. So grew up in the Okanagan. I've lived here for just over 20 years now. So I was in St'Alis territory talking to Elder Darren Charlie about this, and I said, you know, it's strange because I'm not really from here, I guess you could say, but I feel very entrenched here. I've been passed laws and protocols from people here. And so I don't know what to do. And I look like this, right? But I am Mongolian, I am Ashkenazi, you know, I'm of German Jewish descent. I'm, you know, a Native American and English descent and Irish descent. But yet I look like, and so I guess that's why I look like this. And so I said, where do I fit? I don't know, you know, where I belong in terms of a land base. And he said to me, you have to remember the turtle teachings. And the turtle teachings are that wherever you are home and you belong there. And wherever your spirit has landed, that's where you deserve to be. So that, I hold that very dear to my heart. So what we do is we acknowledge our ancestors. We do it matrilineally. So I am the great-granddaughter of Ivy Blood of the Tsalagi Nation. Ivy survived the Trail of Tears. Our traditional territory were the Tennessee Smoky Mountains. And then under President Jackson and the Indian Removal Act, our family, along with thousands of others, were marched forcibly west. And my great-grandmother survived that march. I come from a long line of very strong women. I'm very proud of that. Her son was Arthur Texas Hill Sr., and my father is Arthur Texas Hill Jr. My mom is Dale Reister. And so from my mom's side, I am the great-granddaughter of Madge McKinney of Yorkshire, England. She was really neat. She lived to be 92. She died young. That's young for our family, for our women. Her daughter just died at 100, and only because she had a reaction to the COVID shot. It was a shock that she died at 100. We thought, what the heck are you doing dying so young? You have no business. But Madge McKinney was just such a superstar. My great-grandfather left her in the middle of the Depression with 3 little kids to raise for a secretary. And they were living in Vancouver. She had to lie and say she was a widow to be able to get employment. And she had been trained as a teacher in England. And so she taught at what was called Jericho Hill. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. So in the Jericho area out towards UBC. And she taught the deaf, mute, and blind. And often those children had all 3 of those challenges. So she was a superstar, bringing up 3 tiny little kids, period, on her own, in the middle of the Depression, in Vancouver, in an area that was very affluent, and she was looked down upon because of her status as a single mother. Anyway, her daughter, as I mentioned, Joyce, just passed away in November at the young age of 100. How dare she? Her name was Joyce Reister, and my grandfather was Alex Reister, and their daughter, my mom, is Dale Reister, and I'm the proud mother of a beautiful spirit, Zach, who is half black. My husband was from West Africa, long story. Couldn't make it to Canada, immigration. I know a lot of people here. I've heard stories of real challenges with immigration. And so now I have a young man who is launching himself in the world and finding it at times very challenging. He was racially profiled at age 15, and now we are living in Tsawwassen now, and it has been such a great thing for him. We haven't lived in Surrey yet, but we live out there, and that land is nurturing him big time. So that actual land is healing my son and his trauma. And the birds, the herons are nesting right now. If you're going out towards the ferries, you have to look like at the base of English Bluff. There's like hundreds of herons in the nests, most I've seen out there ever. The eagles, the hawks, the owls, and the land itself is just, it has absolutely been healing for my son. Land does heal, culture does heal, right? And so the Coast Salish people have been generous enough to allow my family to live here. I am a visitor. Yes, I'm of Indigenous parentage, but I am a visitor here. This is not officially my territory, so I'd like to acknowledge that. So the Coast Salish families, they're very generous. They're very open. If you ever want to go ask questions, you want to have conversations. We have so much common background of what we've gone through with colonization from many different cultures and places. And I don't know if you've had the chance yet. If you haven't, oh, please do. There's a beautiful book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer, who is an Indigenous biologist and botanist. So she's a scientist, and she weaves in her stories funny stories about students and teaching, but also with her Indigenous knowledges and stories. And she talks in it about the trees and the roots. And I was thinking when I wasn't going to, this just sort of came to me as I was sitting here looking around the room at your beautiful faces tonight, that we are very much like the trees and the roots. We are interconnected. We have to stop looking at other people as the other. And I need to use my privilege as white passing more, and to use my voice more, to stand up. I try to do it a lot, I need to do it more. It was always hard to know where to fit in, as I said. But now I know for a fact that one of the reasons I look like this and I walk in different worlds is as a bridge builder. And so that I can lend my voice to those who may not have one or haven't found their voice yet. And the trees are cousins, as we are. The tree roots, no matter where they are, they find each other. This happens. They find each other, they touch, they connect, and they are symbiotic. They need each other to stand up, to grow strong, to grow healthy. They need each other. And each and every one of us in the world have a symbiotic relationship, and it's sacred. And we have to, no matter what our own personal biases, and we all have them. We all have them. We have to stand up. We have to find each other. We need for our roots to touch each other. Sometimes that means having difficult conversations. Sometimes that means asking questions and not being afraid to ask questions. But it's all about standing up for each other and with each other so that we can continue to grow strong. Because as I say, we are interconnected, we're all connected. Sometimes we forget that. But we all, no matter where we're from or whose territory we're standing on, we all have Mother Earth as our first mother. We all look under the same moon. We have the same sun. We have what we call Father Sky. So we are connected, and if we just remember that and just gently remind others, I would say, of that connection, then as I say, like those trees, we'll find our roots, we'll find our ways. We are living in challenging times. Every generation has challenging times where they're afraid, where there's geopolitical turmoil, every generation. But we're at a very exciting point, I think, in history too, where we are more of a rainbow, and if we can use our rainbow to touch other clouds, turn those clouds from gray into brighter clouds, the world will be such a better place for it, and we can't lose hope. We can't lose hope. Even though it's a trying time, we can't lose hope. And that's the other reason I think we're all here tonight, because we do have hope things will change. So I raise my hands in thanks to you and say, Haichko Osiem. Thank you, honored for being here. Okay, so my skirt too, it's a ribbon skirt, it's a ceremony, yeah, it's a cultural thing, and I'm just rocking them when I want to, not just a ceremony now.
I think the wraparound blanket is comfort, right?
Yeah, so blanket is a symbol in Indigenous cultures. We're very different. There's 660 First Nations in Canada alone, never mind the States. But the blanket is a universal symbol of friendship and love and comfort. Sometimes we give it when someone passes away. But it's, when I use this, the symbol is that I will wrap myself in the love and caring that I received here tonight. Yeah, so it's very important.
And she's gonna come say a few words. And Palak, she's the director of communication, marketing, and all that. I want both of them to come, and because both of them need to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kamlaji. Hello, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. When I was walking to the library, I saw the message at the front gate that you all belong here, no matter what age, what gender, what color you have. It was just at the library front. So racism exists. As being an immigrant, I have faced it, I have witnessed it, and we all see around us. So it's whatever Kamlaji is doing, it's thank you so much for doing it today. It's really an honor that you have brought us together. It means a lot. I just want to give a message on behalf of our organization that we also, from the last 3 years, we've been doing some kind of initiative for youth. It is called Anti-Racism Initiative. It started 3 years ago when we brought youth together from Surrey and Delta, we did a 3-day seminar. Dr. Musa, you may have heard of him. He's an anti-racism advocate who plays a key role to do the laws. He did a seminar for this youth. 60 youth came together. First day was, we were going to talk about racism, its types, and how it is basically affecting people. Second day, we were doing it in a role play. You know, let's play the role together. Just trying to open them up. Third day, we gave them a piece of paper and asked them to draw. What do you feel like the racism? Younger one was an 8-year-old. He wrote, is it a racism if someone say that you smell like a curry? Right? The second person did it. We were surprised that how that 60 youth members were able to express themselves on the canvas. That is the day we decided that we're going to do anti-racism every year, like art exhibition, because we can show that racism is there and how to be an anti-racist, and that art pieces we can bring the community together. So we've been doing it for the last 3 years. There are 5 ambassadors who carry forward this together. Tomorrow is our 3rd one. It is happening at the City Hall. Of course, open invitation to everyone. Please come and join us. And we want to see all of that and see every story. Tell us all the paintings, 115 paintings out there. That what is telling us that colors are not to judge people. It is just for canvassing. One needle you poke, the color of the blood, whether 100 needles are going to be red. So Kamalaji, thank you. Now really want to acknowledge on behalf of our organization the amazing work you've been doing it. I would like to invite Nina, our all directors, if we can give you a token of appreciation on behalf of our CEO. Please bring that from here. Thank you.
Publishing tomorrow. Sorry. And these are all the art paintings, 115 in there as well.
As being non-profit, we always try different initiatives. We have also tried during this tough time.
I didn't really want to, I was confused about whether I should be sharing the initiative here or not, because here we're talking about anti-racism, and this is another initiative, but I'll just take a minute to share that PIC Society has come up with an initiative called Loyal Canadians. And it's not basically only a PICS initiative. This is an initiative for the whole community, for whole Canada, where we are promoting live, travel, and buy Canada. We know that we're a land of immigrants, and we know that people love Canada. And we all, despite of what race, color, religion we are, let's just leave everything behind and come forward and support being a Canadian. And then the tagline here we have is, wherever you go, choose Canadian. So all you can do is go to the website called loyalcanadian.ca, and you will find your badge there. It's a free e-badge. Just put your picture there, and you can also promote your own organizations by putting the logo. It's a made-up badge. Use it as your social media icon, display picture, email signatures, and just use the hashtag #LoyalCanadian. That way you will be joining the movement. And again, let's say bye-bye to racism and hello to loyal Canadians. That's it.
I want Nina to come as well, because it's PICS event. It's not just Camilla. I guess you forgot to bring your banner, but that's all right. PICS is here, PICS is present. So the reason I want to acknowledge them and award them with a little plaque of thank you, because they are the main sponsors of the event. Without the money, it doesn't matter how much it costs here to bring the food, to rent this place, to buy the flowers, to make the plaques, it all boils down to money. And I'm so grateful for PICS have been supporting me for past few years and still doing it this year. So I want to acknowledge that without the sponsorship, it doesn't matter what you want to do, can be done, unless you have lots of money to spend. So we want to acknowledge PICS for being able to sponsor the event. So we got 2 awards, and and one is for Raj Bra, she's the director, and she is the one that started anti-racism initiative at PICS. Before Raj, I have been PICS with 10 years, I didn't hear about that. And like you had heard that she started in last 3 to 4 years, and they are organizing the art display. And that's Nina Randhawa, she's my boss. And she is also supported. She's financially Harmony House and Serenity House, that's a women's shelter, and they are the ones sponsoring today's event. So I'm very grateful for both organizations and my good friend here. And both of them will get a flowers. Because I know
such a warm and informative and I'd say genuine speech. You know, I think it really comes from the heart, and I really appreciate that. I think we all do. And I just want to add that I have seen our mayor at so many events. I used to write for The Voice, and if there's one person locally that can speak to issues, it's genuine. You know, so I want to thank you for that, because when I learned about your new position here, you know, I think that was important for Surrey. I'd like us to put our hands together. These days, people parachute into institutions too quickly with no historical knowledge. Sorry. That's my sociology. Okay. I'd like to continue and with the schedule. And it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our Honorable Senator Baltej Singh Dhillon, a retired RCMP officer with 34 years of service, is renowned for breaking barriers as the first Mountie allowed to wear a turban on duty. Championing diversity and inclusion, and I think that's an example of hope. If you didn't believe in that, I think that spark. So I think that's something that we should remember. Beyond his trailblazing career, Senator Dhillon actively supports marginalized communities through nonprofit organizations like Coast Mental Health, a Sikh minister and dedicated youth mentor. His contributions have earned him prestigious awards, including medals, community awards, and honorary doctorates, reflecting his profound impact on society. I probably need to create a whole course on this, but let us join hands and welcome.
I had to fix my pants, because if I didn't do that, my dear wife would point it out to me, say, you walked up there with your pants sticking in your socks, and that would not be good. So folks, thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be here, and Camilla Singh and Brust, you know, the work that you do and the work that you've been doing in this community has left a mark, and has certainly allowed for this community to grow and thrive in ways that otherwise would not have been possible. I've gone on Camilla Singh's show a number of times, and it's always been an honor for the sometimes easy questions, but sometimes hard questions that you ask of me, and I'm grateful for that time. Thank you for being a voice. Thank you for being that beacon that we can count on as a community to continue to keep these issues alive outside of these days that we celebrate. Because this is not a one-day thing, it's an everyday thing. And it's 365 days that you feel the hatred, the pain, the harm, the injury. And we get back here today and we celebrate this day. It's a bit of a balm. It's a bit of a getting together. It's a bit of a healing moment for all of ourselves. But then tomorrow comes. And tomorrow we've got to face some of those issues again. And we remember this day and we look forward to the next day that we celebrate. I also want to honor Mayor Brenda Locke. Allies are important, folks, critical. We can speak loudly, shout from mountaintops. But unless we have allies that stand with us and say, yes, I stand with her, I stand with her, I stand with them, just as you have, you know, those voices become lonely, they're diminished. And so it is important that we honor our allies. And I see Annie here, and I call her the Annie, because Annie Johanna has been an incredible champion in our community. She's an educator, but believe me, she does not let that slow her down any, because her classroom is not in a school, her classroom is in the community. She brings, absolutely, please do give her a hand, absolutely. Because that's how you identify a champion. Someone that brings the lessons of the classroom and puts them into practice. She's a practitioner. That's the difference. So as a practitioner, she allows her voice to be both heard in places at times where others might shy away. And I've heard her stand tall. I mean, she's not very tall, but that's all right. But she stands tall and has faced some criticism along the way as well. And I know. So look, this is important for all of us, that we have each other's back. Very, very important. I'm not going to share much of what's already been shared as to why we are here. We know why we're here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do. And I know we're short on time as well. And I've got my eye on that food too. I mean, I can smell it. Right? So we take pride, both as a province and as a nation, in our diversity. But look, you can legislate diversity. Inclusion is where we need to put effort towards. I was included, well, I was allowed to come to the RCMP as part of the diversity program, as part of the diversity, issue. Well, we want to have more people that represent the community, so let's bring them into the organization. So you can legislate diversity, 1,000%. But until somebody's there to include you into that organization and make you a part of that organization and allow you to serve in that organization the same way as everybody else, all you are and all you've been is simply somebody that they brought in as a token. That's all it is. So the first 10 years that I was in the RCMP, that's what I fought. Was fighting that tokenism. Because what they had done was, we've achieved diversity. We've achieved diversity. Look, there's somebody there, right, that looks like the community. But when it came to a promotion, when it came to a job, when it came to doing something different, no, man, you're not going to be good enough. You're not going to do well here. This is not for you. We have other people that can do that job. You just keep doing what you're doing. So that's where some of our fight lies. That's where some of our effort, we have to turn our minds to that. Now, there's some regression that's occurred in the last little while, and we've seen that with what's happening to the south of us, right? We've tried very hard in this country to keep those forces that we've spoken about here, and we've mentioned, in the dark. They're there, right? Those that came out to kill Nirmal Singh Ji. We've tried to keep them in the dark. We've tried to take their voices away. We've tried to not allow them a platform from which they can speak from. But now we are today in a world where denialism is allowed. That just happened. That just happened. And I'm grateful to John Rustad, the leader of the opposition, for taking action on that. But again, that could have happened sooner, in my view. It went on for too long. So leaders have a responsibility, and when leaders don't speak out, don't act in time, what that does is that it gives, I know Jennifer spoke about roots, but I'm just going to speak about roots in a different way. It gives roots to that hatred to grow. It allows for those people to step out of the darkness and say, oh, okay, it's okay to say what we need to say. It's okay to, bring about hatred. It's okay to speak out in a way that otherwise would not have had any opportunity. So that's changing, that's happening right now. If we're talking about, someone mentioned earlier, and I think we saw it on there, it's predictable. And I think you said it, what's,
Yeah.
who did?
It was from the film.
Yeah, you picked up on it, so I'm going to pick up from you. So, right? It's predictable. Well, here we are. Here we are, right? We're openly allowing, when people show up to residential school sites with shovels, that's predictability. What's next? That's going to happen from there, right? So, as much as we take pride in our diversity, we cannot forget that racism, discrimination, they're not things of the past. This is still happening. And that Indigenous people, racialized communities, newcomers, they're still facing barriers in education, employment, healthcare, and justice. Hate crimes, racial profiling, online harassment, I know. I saw some of that when I got appointed as a senator. It came all came back, right? These remain harsh realities for many of us. So these days are important. These conversations are important because we cannot turn a blind eye to these issues and what's happening around us. Now I know we've got a lot more to cover, so I'm going to get on with it. And I was going to say to my wife, by the way, this is my wife. So, I wouldn't be here without her. I'm getting you flowers tonight, apparently. Cheap guy, what can I say? But when we acknowledge these issues, we don't diminish our pride in our nation or our province. As a matter of fact, we strengthen that. We cannot hide these things. We cannot, in any way, shape, or form, diminish them or make light of them or think that they'll just pass on their own. So champions, allies, people in leadership roles, we have a responsibility. We are accountable. I may be the senator, but the office belongs to you. Use it. Leverage it. Apply it in whichever way you think it's going to serve this community. Because it's not my office, it's the office of the people. And I know Brenda feels the same way. And if we're in these positions, it's to allow for that voice to be heard. So I'm grateful to the Prime Minister. In the last little while that he had, one of the things that he, in this time, cemented once again, just like his father did, is that representation is important. And so that voice is important. The conversations are important, but that representation is even more important. Racism not always overt. It's embedded. It's embedded in as much as we're seeing a lot of it very overtly these days, but a lot of it is embedded in systems that are not formal. And, you know, Indra will speak to this for days on end, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert here, but there are formal systems and informal systems. And the RCMP commissioner some years ago was called to in front of a committee and said, we don't have systemic racism. Yes. Right? That was the day everyone that ever had a racist experience went away. Because if your commissioner, if the top person in that organization says there's no systemic racism, all that you have experienced is now no longer valid. It's been invalidated. Who are you going to go to? Right? So it took time and a lot of conversation to help people understand that your processes that are formal are not the issue. It's the it's the processes that are informal that's the issue, because of those informal processes, the inadequate processes, and by not allowing folks the same opportunities, you diminish their abilities, their capacity, their training, their experience, that they cannot compete the same way as any other person. So what use is a formal process when that happens? So this is where systemic issues come. So let me just jump ahead. You know, we have the Charter of Rights. We're going to leverage that. We have the Multicultural Act. That is important, and it separates us from our cousins. I don't know if I want to call them that anymore. All right? You might want to delete that part of it. And we have a strong effort and work that continues around reconciliation with Indigenous people. There's much more to do, folks. There's a lot more to do around that. A lot more. But policies alone are not enough unless there's will of the people and the will of allies to stand on these issues and speak when they're asked to. And we can also be those allies to other marginalized communities. It's not just one way. We have to speak out as well. We have to stand up as well. We have to show up to those demonstrations. We have to show up when there is a protest. And we have to let our voice be heard as well. So what do we ask ourselves? What are the questions we ask ourselves? And the questions we ask ourselves, in my view, as a practice, is what more can we do to ensure that racial discrimination has no place in our workplaces, in our schools, in our communities? What is that? What can we do? How can we empower those who have been marginalized? What does that look like? For people like me that have been given this privilege and honor to serve, for a mayor, for others, for teachers, those that are in the media, how can we do that? And those answers, they don't just lie in broad policy. Policies are great, but until those changes are in our everyday actions, and that's why I say this is not a one-day thing, this is an everyday thing, nothing really changes. So I also have had and continue to, the privilege of sit as the chair of WorkSafe BC. In the last 5-6 years, there has been a tremendous effort in ensuring that we bring to bear right to the last person in that organization what it means to be equitable, what it means to be inclusive, and what diversity looks like, and how to leverage each other's differences rather than get in the way of each other. And so now we hear about instances where the term DEI or EDI is being replaced with wellness. Alberta University just did that, FYI. These are signals, folks, little signals that are coming our way. And we need to begin to think about, and I know, Annie, you were asked this question when you spoke on the radio. And you had said that, you know, it doesn't matter what we call it, as long as the result is the same, but this is where we need to turn our minds to. Is the result going to be the same? Is that work going to be the same? Is the effort going to be the same? And the, you know, erosion of some of what we've already have in place that is working and is getting us to where we need to get to is a risk, is a threat. And it's something we need to turn our minds to. Why is that happening? Why did you need to change that? What is it that was so bad in that practice and in that work that you need to change it to this work now? That's where I start. Tell me, what was broken that you're trying to fix? What are you trying to add that was missing? What was absent that we now have to think about changing the name to bring about that work? So I think there's a lot that we're going to have to be absolutely vigilant about in the coming years. This next 4 years, wow, there's a lot more than tariffs that are going to happen to us, I gotta say. But let me end with this. Well, let me end with 2 things. Let me first share a little story on a lighter note about when I first joined the RCMP, and how racism actually can work in our favor. Not too long after I joined the RCMP, I was on patrol one night, and the new laws around firearms, and you're going to laugh at this as well, was put in place where you can no longer drive around or leave firearms or a rifle in the rack of a pickup truck when you left the vehicle. You would think that would be common sense. It was not. So you actually had to remove, the law was that you had to remove those rifles, long guns, and put them under your seat or behind the seat. Anyways, this is Quesnel, by the way. Everybody had a pickup and everybody had firearms and long guns. So I'm on duty, I'm on patrol, I pull up behind this vehicle, this pickup truck that's parked outside of a bar, see the firearms there, and I start to run the plate, and soon enough the driver, the owner, register owner comes running out, and I won't repeat what he says, but they weren't very, flattering words to describe a police officer with a turban. But he recognized that it was a police officer, and soon after, my sharing with him that, look, all I'm trying to do is get you to put that rifle under your seat. If you do that, we're both good, and I will drive away. If you don't do that, I am towing your vehicle, seizing your firearm, and giving you a ticket. And very quickly the tone changed. The firearm was placed under the seat, and we went about our business. Well, several hours pass. I am now in a bar with my corporal doing a bar check. And we walk through it, and the same fellow comes running up to us. And he goes to the corporal and says, I need to talk to you. And he said, yeah, go ahead. He said, no, alone. So he looks at me and says, well, can you wait outside for me? I said, sure. So I go outside and I'm thinking, okay, here comes a complaint. Right? This guy's going to tell him that I was harassing him, I was doing whatever. And the conversation went on for about 10 minutes. And, I was waiting, I could look through the windows, and these guys were quite animated. Well, a few minutes later, the corporal comes out and I say, hey, Sean, look, I was very fair with him. He said, no, it's got nothing to do with that. I said, oh, okay, what was going on? He said he wanted to know how many Sikh RCMP officers are there that worked in Quesnel. I said, oh, interesting question. He said, yeah, because he saw you earlier checking his pickup truck, and then he saw another turbaned RCMP officer doing traffic control at a motor vehicle accident, and then he saw another Sikh RCMP officer watching the streets, and then he saw you in this bar just now. And he was surprised that there were so many Sikh police officers in Quesnel, and he wanted to know how many were there. I said, what'd you say? He said, well, there's 7 because the other 3 are on holidays. Right? So, bias can sometimes work in our favor as well. Let me leave you with this. Many of you may know just Wansing Kalra, human rights activist, spoke about and was a champion around the violence that was acted on over 25,000 Sikhs in Punjab. Illegal killings, extrajudicial killings, and people just went missing about the Punjab police. He started speaking out about it. He was a human rights lawyer. And he was assassinated in 1995. He often would tell this story, and it's a folklore in the Punjabi community, that when the sun went down one evening and darkness started to come across the nation, and it started to get darker and darker, there was this worry, there was this concern, there was this fear of what would happen when darkness set in. And that's when one lantern said, I will light up. I will light up to provide that little light of hope. And with that another, with that another, with that another, until the entire nation was bright, because one lantern decided to light. So, in the same way, we too have that opportunity. When we see an injustice, when we see something that's being said that is wrong, and we all are on social media, I know, because I see you on, that is when we get to speak up. And it's easier now. You just gotta like that person who's speaking out and offer a few comments of your own. That is how we quieten those voices. That is how we stand up against them. That is how we let them know that we're not hiding, that we're not quiet, and we're not gonna allow that to continue to be prevalent or have and find root in our nation, in our province, in our city. Thank you very much for having me.
For such an informative speech, and also coming, not cerebrally. We often hear cerebral from the mind, memorized, page 30, chapter 2, but from lived experience. And I think we need to also recognize the gems in our community and those that have experience. I'm not saying that they're here forever, but we're getting older, and we can't take that for granted. And so really appreciating the voices and listening will resonate, because there are many people that are no longer here. I think about Dr. Harry Sharma, Chin, and many others, Charan Gill. I mean, the list goes on, but they were advocates. So let us not forget. You're not an elder. No, exactly. That's what one student. Let us not forget our youth. Yeah. I say that because I just accepted early retirement from Langara. Been there for 28 years. I'm way too young to retire, but I think about the next step. And I think of what you do, and it never ends. So with that, please have something to eat. You have to unfortunately go to the basement to go to the bathroom, the ground floor, and come back rejuvenated in 10 minutes. We will start the panel. Each panelist has about 5 minutes to speak to a lived experience or share something, and we want to just open the floor to hearing what the community has to say. Okay?
Jalebi.
Rizwan Abus is an archaeologist with the Semiahoo First Nation, a cultural historian, author, and director of the Indo-Fijian Cultural Society of Canada. His goal is to research, preserve, protect, and perpetuate the Indo-Fijian culture, both in Surrey and throughout the diaspora. And as an archaeologist, he ensures that First Nations heritage and cultural history is preserved and recognized here in the Lower Mainland. For his efforts, he was awarded the City of Surrey Civic Distinction Award for Heritage Preservation. Congratulations on that. With us, we also have Annie Ohana. She's an internationally recognized dedicated educator and anti-oppression curriculum specialist, community builder, and organizer based right here in Surrey, BC. She serves as an Indigenous department head at LA Matheson Secondary and educates to liberate. Ohana has navigated both privilege and oppression throughout her life, and she's worked with organizations from the local level to internationally, including writing curriculum for films on 2S LGBTQ1A+ lives and international humanitarian law on global level. You'll hear a lot about her, and she can introduce a lot of her own work. With us, we also have is a therapeutic counselor, mental health worker, filmmaker, and longtime advocate for Equal Rights and Social Justice. He's a co-founder of the Coalition Against Bigotry, a civic and community-based anti-hate task force. He is a recipient of BC Anti-Racism Intercultural Trust Award, which recognizes outstanding efforts to cross-cultural trust. I'm personally going to give it to him.
Maybe that's what it was.
He was the producer of the excellent documentary called Hate Can Kill.
Director.
I don't remember seeing that. Producer was on there, director.
Producer director.
I stand to be corrected, sorry.
Michael was
Michael, where's Michael?
He had to leave.
He had to, okay. So what I thought I would do is I have a few other introductions, but I thought we can begin with with Rizwan, just beginning in that order, and then we would go with Jennifer, and with Annie, and then. Oh, sorry, yeah. It was just. Let's put our hands together. We've got an awesome panel. We will have the first three speakers whose bios I read to speak, and then I'll proceed with the others. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Give him the mic. It's a floating.
Good evening, everyone. Just excuse me, I'm in day 20 of Ramadan, so as the month goes by, I get less and less energy as the nutrition and the sleep starts getting to me. But so for the past couple of days, I've been humming and hawing about what I wanted to speak about here today, and I didn't know, like, should I speak about something about what's happening in America at the moment, what's happening in Palestine, or maybe the Democratic Republic of Congo, or perhaps as an archaeologist in British Columbia, I'm one of the few visual minorities that work here, and I've had my fair share over my 25 years of experience with racism, casual racism, and just little things here and there. But yes, last night I was having dinner with my family, and my 9-year-old actually had a conversation with me, and she brought up Ruby Bridges. And if you don't know who Ruby Bridges is, she was the 6-year-old girl in the 1960s who broke the segregation barrier in elementary school. And we were talking about her, and came to realize that she's turning 70 years old this year. So she's still here. And if you Google her, you'll see photos of her, and you'll see people. She was actually escorted into the school with armed guards because of the racism that this 6-year-old girl was facing as she was walking to school. Now, Ruby Bridges is still alive, and she's 70. Those people in the photo, some of them are still alive as well. So racism, outward racism, is still not a generation away. It's still, those people are still here. And it's kind of interesting that, like, my father-in-law is here as well, and he's pushing 89 years old now. And he actually lived through the partition in British India. So when we think about the history of racism, we kind of forget that it's not something that happened a long time ago. It's something that was still prevalent today. Those people that were there then, they're still here now. And it's actually starting to happen again. And we're starting to see these things bubble up again, as we've talked about in the States. And well, Canada is also a colonized state. We also have our fair share of Indigenous injustices that we've done to people here. And it's something that we don't get taught. When I was in social studies school in the 80s and 90s in high school, we were never taught about what happened to the Indigenous people here. Right. Nobody talked about it. As a person of Indo-Fijian descent, I know that my parents and my grandparents were never taught about what happened to them and what happened to our ancestors there either. So why would they? Why would the people who did the oppression teach about what they did? Why would they teach about what they did to us and all the atrocities that were committed? It's up to us to learn about it and to teach it and to perpetuate the knowledge so we can stop this from happening. And because of this idea of colonization in Canada, the country, as we've had people touch on this already, the country was built on this framework of colonization, and it's a framework that we still live in today. So what I do with my work is this concept called decolonizing your mind. And basically what it means is, it means everything that you've been taught, everything that you've been told about yourself and the world around you, you have to suspend the belief of that. And you have to ask questions of where is this coming from? Who is teaching us this, and what is not being taught, what's being left out? And one of the greatest examples I have, growing up, I grew up in a small town in the Kootenays called Sparwood. Excuse me. And there wasn't very many Muslim people there, let alone Indo-Fijian people. But some of my friends were, most of my good friends were Punjabi Sikhs. And they always self-identified themselves as East Indian. And it confused the heck out of me. Because if you look at where the state of Punjab is, I mean, it's as north as the north can get. So I never understood where the term East Indian came from. And it wasn't until I realized that when Christopher Columbus erroneously landed in the Americas, we automatically became the Indians from the East, being the east of London. But in truth, we've always been Indians from India, Bharatiyas from Bharat, from time immemorial. And that's something that's that framework that we have to question and we have to change instead of just falling into it and living through it. One of the issues that I face personally when it comes to racism, unfortunately, is racism within my own South Asian community. I call myself a Canadian Muslim of Indo-Fijian descent. So I get marginalized right away when my son walks around and he calls me Abba. That separates me from another community as a Muslim. I get separated also because of my religion, or also because of my nationality, of my background of being from Fiji. And then I also get segregated more because of the shade of my skin. And one of my wife's cousins, actually, he's a comedian, and he had this joke about skin color, and it was talking about what color of brown is okay, and he got to about Sicilian brown, where it's like acceptable, and what we don't realize is that as South Asians, as people of color, we're not minorities. As a matter of fact, we're a majority. We're a world majority. There's more than 1 billion of us, whether it be in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Guyana, Mauritius, Fiji. It doesn't matter where we are. We are a group of people that need to come together. And I'm not just saying as people of color, but just people in general, we need to come together. We need to realize that the framework that we were built in was a framework that specifically was built to separate us and segregate us, whether it be race, religion, creed, or color. And that's what we've been working against for the longest time. And we need to change that. I'm going to keep it short, it's within 5 minutes here. But what I would like you all to do is I would like you to go out and I would like you to challenge that, decolonize your mind and challenge what you've been taught before and question it and ask the questions of why and where did it come from. And you'll realize that a lot of the segregation that happens, a lot of the pitting against each other is a colonial construct, and that's a framework that we need to change. But the first way you do it is you have to change the framework within your mind. Thank you.
Much and the only notes I took is really because I wanted to respond and kind of be in the room and listen and then jump off things, and as a teacher that's what you always do. So just 2 quick points that in my socials class, we talk about the myth of the And that's one of the examples, right? East Indian, because I grew up learning that phrase. It disappeared in America, because nobody ever talked about that at all, but then coming back and then seeing the new language, right? But I do teach about how we build those maps, and what's the center? Why is it the Middle East, right? And all these things, so thank you. And secondly, Ruby Bridges is not only alive, the books that she writes are now banned in America, or a variety of American states. The picture books that she writes, and I urge you to pick up one of her books, right, or all of them for that matter, they're beautiful. And it wasn't just the angry white kids and their families that lined that entreated the school. She spent all of her formative years of elementary school being taught alone. She had a teacher who taught her in a classroom alone. Imagine what it's like as a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, whatever, right? To be told, okay, yeah, good for you, we desegregated, but we're only gonna do that. So it's interesting, because that's something that is not always taught either. For me, what I wanna focus on is maybe a couple things that came up today. Number one is hope. I love hope, it's all about hope. But I want you to notice something, that everybody assumes hope is comfortable. That everybody assumes hope is kumbaya, hold hands, sunshine, the ray of sunshine to the clouds. That's not to put what you said down. And you know what it is? It's not. It's uncomfortable. It can feel dangerous. It can be criminalized. So let's look at Palestine right here in the BC context, where politicians of all kinds will not use the word Palestine, they'll just say Hamas. That teachers like myself and others will face outright criminalization, investigation, because of simply wanting to teach. And I'm a Mizrahi Sephardic Jew, so for those that's Arabic Jew, my family's Moroccan, I have family in Iraq, anyways, I'm not the Ashkenazi Jew. I'm white passing, my family are very dark, just, fluke of DNA. And that's fine, as someone also said, right, using Indra, I think, to use that privilege, right, absolutely, to be in those spaces as the grunt worker, not necessarily the person at the front all the time. So hope is something that can be criminalized. And it's something that, if you say, well, we want to live in unity and inclusivity, and then people are told, oh, that's not good. Because don't put me next to a trans person. Don't put me next to the dark-skinned person. Don't put me next to the Muslim, or against the lateral violence that I've seen in my own school and in other places, where a Sikh, a Hindu, and a Muslim person will not sit together. Secondly, that color, it's a very interesting idea, the idea that we have these shades. They cross borders. So I don't care how many times I might say I'm Canadian, or other people might say that. Do you notice it's not good enough? It's not good enough to say, I'm an American. Look how many people are being deported. Extrajudicially, but worst of all, judicially. Because yeah, what Trump is doing is extrajudicial. It's illegal. It goes against the Constitution. It goes against every law, every judge so far. And yet it is the law, right? That's the reality of the situation. And please do not think that only happens down there. That it has been happening in Canada for years. There was a jail under Vancouver Airport, right? People have died there. So we have to be careful right now when we try, and it's not to say that Canada can't do better or has not done better, in a way, yes, but we have to be we are coming up, and I don't want to be political, I don't care about that. It's more of be careful how people draw you in by the words they use, and that's every political stripe. So I'll move on to the next point of exactly how that racism brings people in. And to me, to be intersectional, all discrimination has to be considered, because it's hierarchy, right? That's what racism, white supremacy does. It puts you in a hierarchy, and that can be within your own faith, in your own culture, or different. And that is what I noticed. So if you recall, or it's still happening, the anti-SOGI protests. People have the right to their opinion, that's fine. Protest, wonderful, all good. I live by that, I die by that. But in the planning of those protests, because thank you to the agencies of policing and others that were looking out for folks that were getting death threats, like myself and others, and kids in their own schools being dead named, being treated horrifically, being bullied, and administration not doing anything about it. When those, and I have the screenshots, they always said, bring a Canadian flag. And in the Surrey context, we had quite a few people of color joining those protests. Some of my own students joined the protests. And I had to unpack that. Why? Why this dedication to the Canadian flag? Because the issue is not, I mean, in a way, it's not really about Canada. And then I realized, and I felt for them. I literally was in tears to think, because if a bunch of people of color get together, what's going to happen? They're going to face racism. They are. I disagree with them vehemently. Teachers are not groomers or pedophiles, right? And yet, I saw the need for them to have some protection. And that's horrible, right? Because then their rights are being denied, right? To say what it is they want to say. So we see this kind of racism, and it changes the way we behave. And when people become powerless, or are powerless, or forced powerless, and so they don't feel their faith is being represented, they don't feel they are being represented. You know, the tons of racism they face structurally, interpersonally, all types of racism. It becomes this power grab. Okay, I can put down the trans person, I'm going to do that. How can I get power here? What's the one way that I can protect myself? Because they aren't listening to me when I'm Muslim or when I'm Jewish or whatever, right? Or whatever category you want to put there, whatever identity you have or you identify with. And that's very sad to see. That's a huge red flag. That we have so many powerless, and this is true of America, there are so many powerless people that their only choice was fascism. And that's why racism is horrible, because actually it works against all of us. And last but not least, the idea of DEI, or whatever language, ESG, whatever the language of the day is. DEI is not a problem. We're not here because of DEI, whether you're economically minded, socially minded, whatever it is. We're not here because of DEI, we're here because of the lack of DEI. Because we haven't done enough to raise people. We haven't done enough to be equitable. It shouldn't have to be a Supreme Court fight for a man to show his faith and do his duty. That's a failure in a way, right? When people have to go all the way through the court system just to find a modicum of representation. And they're usually the only ones. So I find myself in an area where anti-racism isn't something to fear. It isn't something that's problematic. It isn't something that breaks apart merits. If anything, we haven't done it enough. We're too racist. That's the problem. So I want to remind you that because it's something where people talk about these things and go, well, you know, but it's not fair because what if it's the wrong person? And they get lost in that. It's like, well, what if we didn't do enough? So removing these things and in corporations and institutions and academia, letting go of this is hugely problematic. And God forbid I say this, it takes us back to the roots of colonization. It takes us back to the erasure. It takes us back to the idea that there's only one type of person here. So racism has so many roots to it. And I think we need to acknowledge ourselves, the power and the power we don't have. And if we truly see ourselves as humans and people deserving of respect, dignity, livelihood, that maybe then we can get closer to a solution. And don't leave anyone behind. You might disagree with someone, and that's okay. You might not understand why they identify the way they do. That's marginally okay, right? I mean, because there's human rights law, right? Marginally okay. But really, what I want to see is more people that, though they might disagree vehemently with that person's political views, can still say, you're a human, you deserve rights, and I want to give you the power to sit next to me. Not in a violent way, not in a way that says I'm going to be louder than you, but we are then going to have that discussion. And racists hate that. They love that this public school system's falling apart. They love to see people fight against each other. People are making money. Trump has brought money. So will whatever politician, they'll bring money. And it's sad to see that we're letting our humanity fall apart. Again, not because we know better, but because it's that lack of power. And then the way we teach it, right? So that you don't see your own story. And people turn on each other. So I say we choose each other rather than those in power. We choose each other instead of these false ideas. And when someone tells you Palestine has the right to exist, When someone tells you October 7th was wrong, when someone tells you, the British, destroyed Pakistan, Bangladesh, all these beautiful kind of cultures and creations, when there's Islamophobia, when there's all kinds of anti-Semitism, believe them, listen to them, and see hope as a call to action, and realize that hope is not always going to be the person that looks like you, the person that agrees with you, the person that even follows all the rules. Because that's what's happening right now. We're letting hope die. So that's just my own thoughts and from today, and I think as teachers, we do have a dedication to teach hope, but to also do it in a way that's real. And not to tell someone who's suffering and is facing trauma from within their school and beyond, that you have to be ready to fight. But that fight itself can be beautiful. It can come together, it can be collective. I'm honored to work with so many groups that are like me, that are not like me, where it's solidarity.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, we're just...
I've spoken quite a bit. So I just want to talk about the hierarchy of oppression. My grandmother had 6 kids, and she adopted someone who was half black. Like his mother was English, mother was Indian, and father was black. And I think that's really important, but it was eye-opening for me because when my cousin got married in Calgary, I went to the wedding. And his best man was telling him about how my cousin grew up black in Calgary. And that was an eye-opening for me. That, I realized that I have more privilege than my cousin or my chacha, right? And, this is one, but I just want to add to what you both said, that I think we have responsibility when it comes to hierarchy of oppression. That, that we have more privilege than anti-black racism. And I experienced that my own family that is black, I didn't realize that they have less privilege than I do. Thank you, that's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, that's a really important.
Privilege to work with you every day when I come, and you're there and supporting, so it's always nice. And my other team members. I think we've talked quite a bit about racism, and I think we can go on and on, but I'm just going to leave you with the story. So when I was, I've been in this field for very long, right, working with women all the time. So this was quite a few years ago, and I went to work, I was off, then I went to work, this was a transition house in Richmond. So there was a new woman who came in, right? And she had her issues, she was a white woman, and then, so I went and I introduced myself and I helped her with some paperwork, and she's like, oh, it's so nice to have support and all that, right? And then when I go to the kitchen, because it's a communal living, and I'm like, oh, the kitchen is messy, whose time it, someone has to clean, and I start telling, and then all of a sudden she goes, sorry, what language are you speaking? Do you speak English? You have accent? That was the first time I felt racism. Until, I think it's over, 20 years now, and I can still remember the feeling. And when racism happened, it hurts. And it really, really hurts, right? So, and of course, I could have sat there and told her my position, and it's communal living, and I could have given her warning, and I could have talked about, and all I said is, this is racism, and we have no room for racism, right? Let me support you, let me help you, but this is not allowed, right? And I left. And I let somebody else deal with it, because I think it's so important to name it. Let's not walk around it. When it is racism, call it. So I'm all about feelings and stuff, so I always remember, and every day I think my staff also call, we walk in for these single mothers who are looking for housing. We walk in, if they have 2 or 3 children, there's racism. They're not getting housing, right? And what do? Half of them wants to go back to the abuser. So I think we really have to support and help and really talk about and empower them. What else can I say? I think all you guys can do is speak up when something like that happens. Call it, as I said, come to events like this, show up, and be part of it, right? Thank you.